Let's get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Today on the Prenup podcast with Vida Delrahim, co-founder of WeNatal. So, welcome to another episode of the Prenup podcast. Today I have Vida Delrahim, who is the co-founder of this amazing, wonderful product and company called WeNatal. And I'm so excited to chat with you about all things prenups. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I love it. Thanks for having me, Lilli. It's an honor. So I am the co-founder of WeNatal, and how it started was nothing I ever envisioned. I had a 20-year corporate career at Nike. I met my best friend there, Ronit, who her and I just became quick best friends. Like, we were both in our young single dating life, which Lilli, you and I talked about a little bit in LA. It's kind of a horror, but that could be saved for another podcast. And we literally just became best friends. Always knew we wanted to work together. We were in business and marketing, building our corporate careers. We got married around the same time. And of course, had like the dream of like having kids together, being on maternity leave and parent and me classes together. And how our lives played out was that when she was having her first baby girl, I was actually so excited. I had gotten pregnant a few months before her. I dreamt the dreams of like doing all the things together. And unfortunately, I was even past my first trimester. I had told everybody. I went in for a very routine checkup at my doctor's office, only to find out the room went silent. My doctor's face dropped, and he just looked at me and said, "I'm so sorry. There's no heartbeat." And essentially, as I broke into tears asking every single question that I could think of, was it this? Was it that? No, it's very common. Just keep trying. Essentially handed me a pamphlet and told me to try again when I was ready. And I was ushered back through this waiting room of glowing bellies, really with no answers. And I went into a 6-month blame game on myself of caffeine, the high stress. I could have picked any of those things and said that was it. But really, we never knew. And luckily for me, Ronit had left Nike to work for an amazing functional medicine practitioner, Dr. Mark Hyman. And so she's like, yeah, he's inspiring. And he encourages more of root cause medicine and going deeper. And while all my labs were coming out, quote unquote, normal, maybe they weren't optimal. And so she pushed me. She was like, have you checked your thyroid? Have you done this? Have you done that? I went deeper, found out I have Hashimoto's. And with targeted diet, nutrition, supplementation, I ended up actually having a healthy baby girl about a year and a half after she did. And I thought the nightmare was over. There we're like, okay, we learned about our own prenatal care routine. We learned about like removing toxins from our home and some of the basics. And then fast forward to early 2020 amidst like COVID chaos. We were both trying for our second children. And I went in for another routine checkup only to get that same devastating outcome. No heartbeat. I was floored. I couldn't even believe it could happen again, but I was again just told it's common. And the only thing that stopped us dead in our track this time is that a week later, Ronit called me and she had a miscarriage too. And so there we were. Yeah. Two best friends, perfect prenatal care routines, literally thinking we were doing everything right and no satisfying answers. And because she was working in the medicine space, she's like, this doesn't make sense. She kept asking, what could I do to prevent this from happening again? Wasn't given any answers. So she didn't take that for an answer. She went down the research rabbit hole. And I remember the day she called me, and I remember where I was and what I was wearing. And she's literally like, did you know men are 50% of fertility and pregnancy outcomes and miscarriage? And did you know men with high dose antioxidants could 4 to 5 times like improve the likelihood of their partner having a healthy pregnancy? I like broke down in tears because it's so intuitive. Like, it's so like, duh, right? Like, yeah, it takes 2 to make a baby. You need sperm and you need egg. But how could it be that I had multiple miscarriages? I literally had a postpartum depression of blaming myself, and no one even asked my husband a single question. Not his habits, not what he was drinking, eating, nothing. And so when she called me with this info and we learned what a big role antioxidants play because men are regenerating sperm every second of the day, and with and supplementation, they could dramatically improve their partner's chance of conceiving, we literally had to essentially like shift our careers and come out with something that was better. And it didn't exist. Men's prenatals didn't exist. And when we thought the world had too many women's prenatals, we realized there's so much smoke and mirrors in the supplement space. There is not regulation, so it's not regulated by the FDA. People cannot count on what the label says is actually there. You need to make sure you're going with brands that are reputable. Do third-party testing, which makes sure an outside party is testing the supplements afraid of any toxic chemicals, you know, poisons, heavy metals, you name it, that can creep into something you're ingesting in arguably one of the most important times of your life. And so we decided to reinvent the supplement space altogether, from the brand, the packaging, but also creating fertility as a team sport. And the burden should not be on women. It should be dual parties, taking both best foot forward for both, and really putting their best foot forward, not only for a healthy pregnancy, for the lifelong health and DNA and genetics you're giving your future children. And so why we've been working on this for 5 years. We launched about 2022. So we launched about 4 years ago, and it's been an epic ride. We've literally now have thousands of WeNatal babies, positive pregnancy tests, WeNatal ultrasound. Like, literally, people stop us in the market and they're like, this is a WeNatal baby. And it's like literally why everything now makes sense, why we had to go through those losses, why everything in our path now has led to actually helping optimism in this fertility space that we found very dismissive, very fear-mongering, and very negative. And so that has become the why behind WeNatal.
I love it. I love that you found your purpose through such tragedy. Like, it really is such a motivator. And the thing that's crazy is, the past year of research that we've been doing, like, you spend so many years trying not to get pregnant. And then when you finally meet your person, you get married and you're like, okay, let's start a family. You're like, what is happening? Why am I having these blockers? I'm a healthy individual. I'm like, relatively in shape, reducing my stresses. And there are all these pressures. And then one of the things that's been interesting this past year is talking to people like, why do you get divorced? And there's a substantial amount of people that didn't even do any research before they got married. And one person just cannot conceive. Like, there's issues with genetics. There's issues with XYZ. There's, oh my God, we have to do how many rounds of IVF? It's going to be how expensive, and the pressures, because you assume, you just assume
You just
logical next step.
Yep. And it's crazy because both marriage and having kids are such big undertakings. But to your point, most people don't take a few months to do the homework, to find out, to ask the questions, and put their best foot forward. Those are two areas that I really also fast forwarded in. And now in hindsight, I wish someone had told me to actually prep for it the way I prepped. I ran marathons back in the day. I used to run halves and fulls. I wouldn't just sign up tomorrow for LA Marathon, buy a bib and run. I would do the work. I would get the right shoes and apparel. I would get a coach. I would get a training plan. I would find protein and nutrition stuff that matters. And then show up on race day actually ready to do 26 miles and not fall flat.
Did you and your husband, before you guys got married, did you ever talk about, okay, if we can't conceive, what does our future look like? Or if we have to do IVF, what does it look like? Was it ever a topic of conversation pre-marriage?
Never. It was what you said. It was okay, we're young, we're healthy, we've been married a couple years, and literally no change in our routine. No even discussion. Not even basics, who's going to help us when the baby comes? Your parents or my parents? What are we there's a lot of foundational stuff that you should probably talk about before kids. Zero.
It's so crazy too, because I do think, even myself, I was in a long-term relationship for a while, and I look back and I think you get into so many assumptions if you just get along and your families might be similar and you're from a similar socioeconomic background, and you're like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. And it's just like a prenup, right? Which is, if you keep saying we're going to figure it out, when hits the fan, you guys might not actually want to figure it out together anymore, or the version in your head of what you thought it was going to be drastically changes so much for various reasons, lifestyle, health, whatever it might be. It's, how do we actually tackle this together? What does the financial plan look like if we can't do A or B? What is C? And, are we okay if we can't have kids? What does that look like, right? Or, if we have to get into the thick of it, are you down to try for a few years to figure out what is missing?
And how much better is that to do that conversation when like you're in love, you're just married, like you're thinking about the things. Because let me just tell you, like when my first miscarriage happened, the strain on the relationship is at an all-time high. I was blaming myself, but it definitely like crossed my mind, like his fun behaviors, his habits, his, occasional drinks, his this and that. So my point is you're not like in a rational mind state at that point. Then you become into like this mind state of like hurt, lack, resentment, bitterness of like, okay, here I am scrutinizing what I eat, what shampoo I put on, my hair, like da 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 da. And they're out living their best lives. And at that point, the conversation is not as productive or healthy, at least in my situation, because you're in a stress state where now you really want to have a kid. You wonder if you will ever have kids. You wonder why this happened to you. But having that like loving conversation at the start of a relationship, at the start, is such a great gift you can give your partner.
Totally. So it's crazy. I didn't even know my mom had suffered a miscarriage until I was like in my early 20s. And this is a crazy story, but this is so on brand for my mother. For my, like, I think it was my 18th birthday, she got me a session with a psychic in, this like famous psychic. And I was like, okay, what's happening? And we're in the room and my mom was there with me. And the woman's like, oh, your guardian angel, it's your older brother. And I was like, I don't have an older brother. And like the woman looked at my mom and my mom looked at me and she had had a miscarriage at like 5 months. And I was like, what?
Chill.
What's happening? Huh? Like, what are you talking about? And it's really interesting because I think that like there was a generation that just did not talk about it. And I think it happened a lot more than's probably recorded and or even discussed. But now that I'm in my 30s, I have so many friends now who have gone through miscarriages and like some pretty drastic ones and some really terrible ones and or just challenging births even. And it's like, I wonder what probably like the 3 to 5 questions we should be asking our partners or our partners should be asking us before marriage that like maybe aren't financially related. They are pieces of this larger puzzle. It might not be a contractual question. It is just like a lifestyle question around this space. Like what would you recommend based on all the research and the couples that you've talked to and seen? What would be 3 to 5 questions that you're like, hey, you should probably chat about this if you're getting to a point in your relationship where there's probably an engagement in the future? What should couples be chatting about?
I love this question. And I think this is now my mission to educate couples. I think the first thing is, are you willing to do this together? I think the reality is women take on a lot of the burden. And really, we're seeing now with WeNatal's men's product, these men are showing up as the best possible partners they can be. It's low hanging fruit to take a couple supplements a day, but also it goes beyond that. Are you willing to remove some of the toxic lifestyle stuff that's very common now? Talk Call it smoking weed, drinking daily, all the things that are like mixed up in culture, but it's not conducive and it's not optimal for having kids. And so it's like, are you ready to go on this journey together? Let's clean up our home of toxins. Let's really look at what we put in our body wash, skincare, beauty care. Like, let's do this as a family. Anyways, you're going to want some of these behaviors in place before a baby comes in your world. You're not just going to want clean detergent for the baby's clothes. You want it for your clothes and your lifestyle. So it's always funny to me when people are like, oh, I'll only do this for the baby in the baby's room. But like the baby's sleeping on top of you, the baby's in your house. You're going to want to make these micro changes before. And I also truly believe in feeling supported from both partners is letting your body get out of fight or flight mode when you are trying to conceive. But what I think there's a couple things. I think one's the lifestyle. So really in it together, the food and the nutrition, removing toxic lifestyles. And I tell the guys in our world, like, it's not forever for you, dude. Like it's 3 to 6 months. 3 months, you have a completely new batch of sperm to put your best foot forward. And it's just a small investment in your future and your baby's
Literally
lifelong
90
health.
days.
We're not asking for forever, right? So, like, one
Yeah.
is the lifestyle changes together. The second, I would say, is the partners actually, to your point, talking about what if. So, if we try and it doesn't happen, like I know friends of mine who are a lot of them having kids later in life, one partner might be willing to go to adoption, to surrogacy, to IVF and IUI when one partner is like, if it doesn't happen naturally, you can count me out. So getting on the same page of like, listen, like this is the reality of the world we're living in. 1 in 6 couples are dealing with infertility. And It could be either of us. And so also the standard should be we both get checked ahead of time before we start trying. Why do we have to wait till like a year of disappointment before we see if,
Totally.
the husband's sperm or the male partner's sperm is optimal and the women's eggs are where they should be? And so I encourage, knowledge is power. Don't wait till you're like stressed and in a bad state. Use knowledge, and we have such amazing technology. And whatever you do, to point one on the lifestyle changes, is only going to help your outcomes for IVF, IUI, any of those be more fruitful, because we also know those are not a sure thing. They're very costly, they're very hard on the body, and it's not a 100% guarantee. And so getting ready and putting your best sperm and egg forward will only improve those outcomes. And so it's a little bit of like the body, the mind, and really like getting on the same page. And we're likely the only supplement brand that has a journal. But why I mention it right now is we have 50 questions in there that are so beautifully written by Lilli, who's been a big mentor in my life. But what she outlined there was questions that couples should be talking about before they have kids. For
I
our not
love
yet pregnant,
this.
it's amazing. And it's also 3 minutes a day of daily gratitude, because while gratitude used to be very woo woo and like granola, we're now actually showing so much research that gratitude's like a muscle. It's like working out your muscle. The more you're grateful, even when you feel like you have nothing to be grateful for. And believe me, I have those days where like it was maybe
You're gonna
my cup of
laugh.
coffee. That's like all the gratitude I had.
Literally
And
every day.
exactly. And if you can do a few minutes a day, you and your partner, and it's really going to change your body not being in adrenal fatigues, fight or flight, your cortisol shooting through the roof, which, let's be honest, it's all of us these days. Stress is not going away. We're all on screens and sitting way more than we should. So it's a little bit about like food is medicine, being active together, not overdoing it, prioritizing sleep. It's almost like what our grandparents did. But now we have to remind ourselves that sleep is the foundation that actually sets up our health and our foundation for recovery. And so I would just recommend them really showing up together, asking the questions. And the guide that we have is one, but sitting with someone who's an expert is another great option, and really like making the commitment together. And before you even start trying, let's get checked. Let's see how our health is. Let's also decide all the different routes. Are you down to adopt if this doesn't work out? Are you down to use a surrogate if my body can't? Are you down to use a sperm donor if your body can't? There's every scenario. And I've been in the fertility space now for 6 or 7 years. I've seen it all. And so it's just so healthy to do it when you're just in the planning stages versus when I got to it, I was much more in the lost stage and it wasn't a fruitful conversation.
It's also so wild too. I think I was talking to a friend who's a lawyer about this recently, just like the way that the laws are also changing around all of this, because there are so many new solutions to get pregnant, and with embryo freezing and, doing freezing your eggs, which I did, right? It's like, where does that land you? Where does that take you? Who gets what? And these are real conversations, and our parents never could have even processed. So it's not
Fathom.
even like you can ask them, be like, hey, what's your advice on this? Because first of all, they're like, you did what? You did where? You did huh?
True.
Like,
They're
your
like,
eggs
what does
live
that
where?
entail?
But it's
Yeah.
but it's kind of a wild new frontier for law as well. And but I do think that there's something to be said about, like, one of the things that we really want to make sure of with this podcast and this community that we're building is all the questions that aren't the typical questions we can arise, right? What are, like, the things you just asked. Okay, if we can't have children organically or naturally or whatever the appropriate word is, what are the other ways that we could try to conceive? If we can't do it that way, do we want to adopt? Are we okay living in a world without where we don't have children together? Like, will we resent each other for this? And if we're struggling, are you willing to make the sacrifices together to make sure that we can conceive or give ourselves the best possible chance?
Yeah. I have so many customer stories. Also, brand, the one thing I hope it does is give everyone hope. A lot of my narrative was that I was too old, even though I was like 35 when I had my miscarriage. It's like a baby. But the
If
the
you were
system
too
told me,
old, I'm like,
no, but the system was telling me I was geriatric. I got in my head
it's
about it.
insane.
It's toxic. And so I will tell you, the stats are actually shifting. back in our grandparents' generation, more people were having kids in their 20s. Now it's more in their 40s. And we want to empower people that it's awesome to have a career, to actually like know what you want in life and have kids. You're able to give them a completely different, there's no better or worse. It's whatever is best for your family. But I want to give them hope. And I want to share the story of one customer. And now she works for WeNatal, but
Oh
she
my
was
gosh.
trying. Yeah, she was struggling with infertility for about 15 years. 15 years of upset, and her and her husband were really ready to give up. And she found WeNatal because Ronit used to work with her in a past life. And she'd
Amazing.
been taking it and praying and doing all the things. And while she never envisioned having anything other than whatever, holding and carrying her own baby pregnancy, she ended up getting an egg donor and had a healthy baby boy who's now 2 years old at age 56. And
What?
so yes. And now she's 58. The boy is the cutest thing in the world. I'm obsessed with him. And here's what
What?
I'm going to tell you.
What?
She carried the baby full term. She got an egg donor. It was her husband's sperm. And I share that to say that like she could have given up. And it wasn't in her roadmap to get an egg donor. But now she is so fulfilled. She has this dream child that she's
Oh,
dreamed of. And by the way, like many doctors probably would have told her she's nuts, but her doctor supported her, said she's so healthy. And that's another thing. Your biological age and your chronological age are two different things. If you've been really taking care of yourself, and I just did my labs through 100 Health. I don't know if you've heard of it, but similar to some of these lab testing company, they do all these cohesive labs and they tell you your chronological age as it compares to your biological.
oh,
I'm
talk about what I'm
13
Googling
years
right
young.
after our call.
I'm so 100 Health is amazing. They just kind of
Okay.
launched. And I said that I'm 13 years younger biologically. And so it goes back to like, okay, so they fed me a
Crazy.
narrative that I was geriatric. I had the kids both at geriatric age. Ronit also had both of her kids, 38 and 41. I had them at 35 and 38 or 39. And you're not too old. It's not too late. If you look at the example I showed you, she had her healthy baby boy and she carried to term and she lived and she still breastfeeds and he's over 2 and she's a champ. And
That's
so, yes, the narrative is that like it might not always be the way you envisioned or how
it never
society makes
is how
it look
you
like
think
a
it's gonna
movie
happen.
star. Exactly. But if you're open, if you kind of like just start to fathom that to your point, our parents didn't even have these options back in the day. And we're so lucky that we're like with the right education and these amazing procedures, we just have to be smart about putting, the research behind it and whatever's best for
Totally.
you.
I love this. There's so many people I'm just like thrilled to be able to connect you with and connect them with you. And like there really is something to be said also about that. I just had a friend who went through a pretty bad birth experience and she was at one hospital and then she was able to get transferred to a second hospital because the first hospital she was trying to advocate for herself so hard and nothing was getting done. And thank God she got transferred to a different hospital because they were able to help her. But there's something to be said about, you know, I feel bad and I empathize for a lot of doctors in the traditional medical space because everyone's overtaxed. Everyone is exhausted. There are so many people that need help and there's not enough doctors to begin with to help everyone. And so they're also only told what they're told, right? If you were educated that 1 + 1 = 2, but if you blur it a little bit, like, does it really? And you're only told one thing. And so I think there's something really incredible about the fact that you guys are also talking to other types of doctors like Mark Hyman and people who are looking at functional medicine and kind of looking more holistically at the picture to help people take a step back and have a different option, which may not have been available to them before.
I completely agree. And I also really empathize with doctors. They're well intentioned, they're here to help us, but the system is tough. They only have a few minutes with each patient. Insurances are rough and don't pay them what they should. And so they're scrounged. And that's your friend's example is the perfect reason we always say you have to manage your own health. If Ronit didn't tell me to go deeper on my own labs, on my own thyroid, and all that, I probably may or may not have had my daughter. Like, I needed to take my health into my own hands and go deeper than what everyone was just dismissing me as like, you're fine, you're within range. But within range is like a massive range and it could not be optimal. And like your friend would have died in the hospital if she didn't say
Yes, she could
transfer me.
have.
You don't know everyone, you know your body better than anyone. And being an advocate in your whatever,
And it's
any part of your
crazy
life
too,
can
because
be.
to your point earlier, right? Like she's one of the healthiest people I know. She works out all the time. She's like strength, right? It's true strength. She eats healthy. She's kind. She's just, it always, and you're like, what in the world? How did this happen? Where did we go wrong? And like, there is no, where did it go wrong? It's just shoot. Okay. So now, let's get into the other pieces of this puzzle, which I know we had a pre-call a few days ago, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about all of these things." Tell me about your own personal journey, meeting your husband, first few months of dating into getting engaged, getting a prenup, and then getting married.
I love it. Okay, so his name is Sean. We met when I think I was around 31. I'd been single pretty much my whole adult life. Like I talk about 50 first dates. I range the LA dating scene, but also I was like so into my career and loved like working at Nike. I was a high powered executive. And like I found it that most guys found it a turnoff that I was like so into my job. And he was actually one of the first guys that was like into it. He like supported me. He was such a kind, like fun loving. And it's interesting. You have to like kind of go through all that bad dating to appreciate some of the things I thought I wanted on paper. He was not. He was like quite the opposite of what I thought I wanted. Like, just like when you think about the checking boxes, like I loved going to gym. I wanted someone who like super athletic. And well, he wasn't a gym guy. And it's just like back to the point of like having kids, it's like what you think is going to happen, it's always different. But being open, I had to go through all the bad dating to actually like meet him and really appreciate him. And so, a girl I met at a party, we hit it off. She was awesome. At the end of the party, she's like, "Oh my God, I know the perfect guy for you." And I'm like, "You've known me for 2 minutes, but okay." And lo and behold, she connected us. Exactly. I was in the why not phase of my life. Like, why not? And met him. And ironically enough, our first date was on Valentine's Day because both of us kind of didn't catch it. And so it was fine. We did it. He made me
That's
dinner.
really
He
cute.
broke all my rules. I usually said like no meals on the first date, just like a quick drink or coffee because like you know in 10 minutes if you're like gonna be cringe the whole time or you
Yeah,
actually are like worth carrying a conversation. So I like had all these rules and I broke all of them and maybe that was a good sign. So
maybe that's exactly
he
why it
made me
worked.
yeah, we had like a 4-hour first date. We talked a ton and it was just like easy. There was no games from the start, which every other guy you wondering, are they going to text you back? Like there was so much like just a facade. And I felt with him like he was into the fact that he was really close to his family, which was important to me. And really great with kids and loved kids. And so I saw so many of the features that I didn't really think I wanted, but I really mattered more than the superficial things I wanted on paper. And so we kind of had like a year of dating and fun. Our families, like you said, we came from like similar backgrounds and families were very friendly, became very friendly. Ironically, also, we found out we went to the same high school and I was 2 years older,
And
but
you
we
didn't
didn't know each
know?
other. Big high school, like 3,000 kids, but also I was like senior class president and like a complete like straight A student. And he was like, let's just say not proud. And so that's my polite way of saying we
Oh,
wouldn't
that's
have known each
funny.
other in high school. And anyways, after a year, I moved to Portland for a job, but we were still dating long distance. And he proposed while I lived in Portland. So I was finishing out working on World Cup
Oh,
and the
wow.
FIFA World Cup. And then I told my boss, I'm like, listen, I have to move back to LA. I'm getting married. And it was a very exciting time of my life until like a day out of nowhere. He's like, oh, by the way, like, I need you to sign this prenup. And it was a month before we were getting married. Like wedding day was set a month before. I was like, at first I didn't care because I was like, literally, like, you have a small apartment, I have a small apartment. Like, who get like, you want my pillow? I don't get this. Like, okay. And when you're young and in love, you're like, yeah, I'll sign the deal. Like, who cares? However, you quickly realize that it's more than just about you. And my sister, who's a lawyer, not a prenup lawyer, just a lawyer, got involved and's like, oh my God, you can't sign this. It's all one sided. His brother got involved, who was more of like the reason we had a prenup. It was like a family trust situation. And so we started what would end up being the worst month of my life, and it was 1 month before my wedding day, and to this I was in dress fittings, crying my eyes out. I was literally skinny as a nail. I had lost so much weight from the stress, and it should have been the happiest time of my life. It should have been when I was celebrating marrying a man that I loved, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, it was the agony, and the lawyers, what I quickly realized, didn't have our best interests. The lawyers kept racking up bills and getting us to get stuck on these points to make us fight. And so it was so sad. I racked up tens of thousands of dollars of bills that could have gone to like things like our first home and things that matter. But instead, it became this litigious fight. Our families then started to fight, even down to our dress rehearsal. No one was talking. And it was sadly just such a horrible memory. And even down to my wedding day when I signed it literally like the day before my wedding, because I'm like, at this point, it doesn't matter what's in it. We're getting married and this is just going to have to happen. And there was so many things that went wrong. I wish, now looking back that we could have just like sat and like hammered it out together, maybe with the counsel of one lawyer, not two separate parties. There was so much that was unnecessary, so much stress and aggravation. And truly, I don't think the relationship between like my sister and him ever fully resolved. Like it just became such a sad way to start such a beautiful thing. And I'm here to like, I so love what you're doing because it should be like having kids. It should be a moment in your life where you feel empowered to talk about the things, to get excited. And like when you're in the best, happiest, and most loving state, let's discuss all the ways this could go down and make sure we have each other's best interests at heart. And that's what it should be.
Totally. And it should be, this is the other thing, right? Is like, I've heard so many of these stories that it's like, oh, we did it, a month, 2 months, 3 months before. And then you hear that those types of prenups usually get thrown out and there are all these different layers to it and coercion. And you're like, there's a date on the book already. Like if we don't get it done by this date, and then people make decisions that they wouldn't normally make. And to your point, it becomes this like litigation that you're backed into a wall. And so you oftentimes make decisions that aren't actually in your best interest because you're just in a spot. And like my big thing has been the moment before you even get engaged, you should have a discussion about how do you feel about prenups? Like, what do you think? How do you feel? Do you want to get them, right? You don't have to get into the nitty gritty, I don't think, pre-engagement, but like basic levels, and then understand each other's finances and kind of some of these other questions, right? Like kids, what does it look like? Where do we want to live? All these types of things. I was with someone the other day and he and his wife got divorced because she assumed that she wanted kids and kind of, they got married so young. It was like, well, I obviously thought when we got into our 30s, we'd have kids. So when I started kind of pushing her on it because all of our friends around us were having kids, she was like, well, I don't want them. And I'm sorry, what? Not for lack of love. It's just like, well, this is something I've always envisioned and I don't want to give up the opportunity to be a father. And how did I get here? And so
yeah,
I think that there's a lot of this. And the other thing, is to your point of this should be a conversation because you're so in love with each other and you want to be the most generous that you can be to your partner in case something bad happens, because it does happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Like life happens.
What better time to negotiate that than to your point when you're in this happy, loving state and you want the best for the other person. And that is so beautifully said because that's
I
what
have a
it should
question
be.
for you. Did you feel like when you read the prenup for like the first time that was there verbiage that you just didn't understand and you were like, oh my gosh,
All
I
of
need a
it.
lawyer because none of this makes sense?
All of it. I can honestly say 90% of it I didn't understand. And I thought that was by design. Like you need lawyers on both sides. And now looking back, I was like, well, we didn't have Chat GPT back then. So I couldn't have just put it in and say, give me the TLDR on this. I really didn't understand any of it. That's why I thought I would have just signed the damn thing and like moved on with my life.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is I think that there's also like so many misconceptions about what a prenup is. Like I wear these hats all the time, which I'm going to send you one. It says prenup on it. This morning I was doing city Meals on Wheels. I go and volunteer sometimes in the city, and I was uptown, and I don't usually wear my hat when I do this but like I had my hat on that said prenup, and one of the coordinators who, I've met a few times, he goes like, what is going on up there, Lil? And I was like, oh, it's my business, my company. And he goes, damn, I gotta hide. And like, that's his initial reaction, was like, oh my gosh, ooh, that's a negative word. That's a scary word. Let me like, you're a crazy lady. It's like, no, 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 no. Like, let me talk to you about it. And then by the end of talking, he's like, I'm going to call you when I get married. But it is like, there are all these pieces of the puzzle. And to your point of, you got this prenup and you're like, what the is it saying? Because you probably had no idea, like, what is spousal support, alimony, what does waive rights mean, what is equitable distribution, what is common property, what is all these things that, they're not talked about.
They're not. And I'm so proud of you for actually bringing this to the forefront because you're right. It is a bad word. It's uncomfortable. Society has made it like a negative. It's only there to like support the rich person and not take care of the other one. And like you, I think I've only heard about it in terms of like really affluent people, like making sure that if someone marries into the family that's not affluent and they're not just there for the money. So like all these misconceptions, similar to geriatric pregnancy, that we need to rid ourselves from. Like these are toxic terms or toxic like connotations that don't serve us. And the reality is like, look at my story 20 years later. Okay. So I worked at a corporate job. I probably thought I would retire in a corporate job, making my whatever salary, getting my 401k, very standard. And his family comes from an entrepreneur background where they obviously had a family trust and a lot more to quote unquote lose in this situation if anything were to happen. 20 years later, I find my life's mission. I now have WeNatal. It's taking off. Like, did I ever think when I signed that thing that it would be for me, protecting me? But like, I
Oh,
hate to say it, like, so cool. How great.
yeah.
My point is when you're there, you don't know where your life is going to go. You don't know if you might become a YouTube sensation when people are paying you millions. Like, you just don't know. So like, wouldn't you want the best for both parties, for yourself and your partner, no matter what situation
110%.
you're in? That should be the narrative of like, this is just like the homework we do to set ourselves up for success. Let's hope we never need it or use it. But like, it's like the insurance policy. Okay, let's hope we never use the life insurance, but we get it to ensure that we have like a foundation. And that's what it should be. It should be a foundation to ask the questions, to do the homework, make sure you are aligned because listen, you're in your friend's case, we could have saved her from like a marriage and him from like, wasting quote unquote those years because they wanted very different
Totally.
things. And that
And
and
it's also about
so
constantly
having
checking in, right? Which is like for your, with what you're doing with WeNatal too, it's like, okay, you might say, okay, we're in this together. And then you might get a year or two in and you're like, this is tougher than I thought. And like, I don't know if I can do it, or can we try something different? Or like, what does it all look like? But it goes back to constant communication.
yeah, exactly. But when you have the foundation, like, because if you do the prenup, you have the foundation of communication and it actually sets you up for the fertility journey, for how to parent. Are you guys going to want similar things? Are you going to want, basic? How do you want to, like, even me and my husband, we're not aligned on, like, I am very, like, no sugar, like I'm super organic and he's more like live your best life. Like I said, like we're very different and it actually works in a lot of ways, right? Because he's way more fun
Balance.
than I am. I'm much more about the rules. But like, imagine if you could have that alignment from the forward, like screen time. Are you
Yeah.
aligned on when you're going to give your kids a screen? Like, there's just so much that comes in future, even if you don't have kids, like where you want to live, where, buying homes, leasing. There's just like communication is power and knowledge is power. And so having that up front, this begs the conversation up front so that you go into it like, I truly believe it will make a couple stronger.
I totally agree with you. And I think that also there's so many layers to the conversation beyond just the actual legalized prenup, right? Like I've been having a lot of the most interesting thing that I hear from a lot of people recently is like, can I put this in a prenup? Can I put that in a prenup? Can I put XYZ? And I'm like, you can put anything you want in a prenup. Does not mean it's going to be held up in court. Like, which is what lawyers keep saying to me. It's like you could put anything you want in there, but there is no, like, there's some crazy things that people want to put in there. It doesn't mean a judge is going to uphold it when you actually go to get divorced. So, but what it does, it shows you the character of the partner that you're marrying or the priorities of the partner that you're marrying. And do you align on them? And if someone wants to put a clause in there that makes you uncomfortable, like,
Yeah. Exactly.
What does that mean, right? And so there's something to be said about which, like, I'm so excited after this. I already know I do a Substack post with every one of these pods, and I want mine to be with you is like the 10 questions around fertility that you should be talking to your partner about and asking your partner before you decide to get engaged. Like even before let alone get married, but right? Like what if we're going to do this life together, what does it look like from a fertility standpoint? And if especially, as people are getting married later.
Yep. Later, people are into their second or third marriages. People have had amazing careers and want kids, after that. And so, also, even younger people sometimes are struggling because of how toxic our world is. And so, sometimes age is even not only the determinant, but it could be where you live, the air quality. There's so much at play. And so, yes, I think it's so imperative that couples, to your point, even before engagement, just sit and say, do we want the same things in life? I know of a few friends also who had to part ways because one wanted kids, one didn't. One to live close to their parents, the other one wanted to live somewhere else. And
And
so,
that's okay, right? Like, that's the other thing
hey,
that I
but
think we
just
need to normalize
cover.
is,
Yeah,
yeah, like, if there is one person in the relationship that's like, "I so desperately want children, and I don't wanna give up my hope for it," and say you have a partner who's like, "Listen, we've tried it all, I do not want to adopt." Why should you have to stay in something? And you could love that person, but and you can stay with them, which is, wonderful and great, but also, like, if there is an opportunity to leave and try with someone else, you shouldn't be prevented from that because it's the what is it? The ties that bind. Like there's something to be said about working through as much as you can, but there is something also to be said about if you want the opportunity to be a parent and there's other ways, then you should be able to have these real conversations and not get screwed in a divorce.
right. And it's such a great time to have it before anything goes down, before any struggles, before that. It's just like a healthy, calm dialogue.
Yeah.
For me, it became after I had the miscarriage, it became the blame game. Well, you need to stop eating this, and you need to stop doing this. And it just wasn't as productive or loving as it can be. And so I completely agree.
So, okay, what do you think, like, have you seen what do you think the biggest challenge that you've seen just like in your friend network and stuff in terms of like helping sustain marriage, right? Like what are the things that you see? What do you see the couples around you that you really admire doing well?
I think the thing I see the most, and I'm also guilty of not doing it, is really after post kids. For the circle that I'm in, almost everyone has kids, and the relationship goes to the wayside because you're so depleted or you're so focused on all the things the kids need. And while it's cliche and people say like date night and all of that, find what works for you. Like me and my husband will go on morning walks before the kids go to school. It's just like find a time to talk, to be like a couple. I'm not a big late night person, so I don't like big late night dinners and all that. I like earlier stuff. So I told him I'll go to coffee with you during the day. But for me, for many years when we were in the thick of it with like two little kids, there was no date nights. It was like survival mode. I was like sleep deprived. The last thing I wanted to do was like go out at night. I was like, I am like on sleep debt, like times infinity. Don't even talk to me about going out. And I think that hurt him because he's a social butterfly and he like wants to do dinners. And so for me, when we're aligned and when we were talking and we're communicating, we're invincible. And I say, like, when we're aligned, we're the best team in the world because we can get anything done. He's so helpful. He's like a really amazing dad. He's so hands on. I'm the planner. I have to like set them up for everything. And so we do have a good yin and yang. But when there's weeks where like we're ships passing in the night, like I'm traveling or he's traveling, or like, I'm already asleep when he gets home. In the mornings we're rushed. And so you feel like if that gets extended, that could really damage a relationship. I think it's just way harder when you have kids, and that's the reality. And so if that is, and
And
someone,
you're getting into the trenches.
you have to find like, you also have to go back to like what you made you fall in love with the person. And for me, it was looking past the things that like annoy you, or I think when you have kids also and you're sleep deprived and not eating well and all that, everything's
You're like
heightened.
everything annoys
Everything is
me about you.
yes,
And it's
literally
like, but
like
this is just
breathing.
a phase. Like this is a phase. Like we're
Yes.
gonna get
And
past
that was
this.
one of my best friends gave me that advice of like, by the way, this is a phase, this will pass, your kids will sleep. And remembering that like this might be a tough phase sleep wise, but what my other friend told me it's like the bigger the kid, the bigger the problem. So I was like exhausted at the newborn stage. It's much more like intellectual problems when they get bigger, and so which is harder. But
Because now they're
it's just
challenging you.
yeah, I know, some of my mentors believe in time blocking, and as lame as that sounds, like having a consistent time to talk or like schedule helps me get it in. If not, I won't. And so like blocking out a coffee date with him or like go for a morning walk before the kids go to school or like just make it's like the muscle of gratitude. It's like working the muscle and making it a habit. It's like taking your vitamins. Once you become habitual about it, you can't imagine a day without it. But once you've gone without it, you're like, this is just another labor, like a thing to do, and I don't want to do it.
One of the couples I really admire and love here in the city, they do date night every Wednesday. And it's interesting,
Oh, I love that.
they started couples therapy before getting married, and this was years ago, and I remember being like, "What's wrong with their marriage?" Or, like,
Yeah,
their relationship. I was like, "What did they do? Who hurt who? What happened?" Like, that was my initial gut reaction. I was like, "Who up?" And, like, joke's on me that they're probably the most evolved, like, highest communication, and now they've been married for a few years with a kid, and, like, they do it, like, once a month as maintenance now. It's like, "Oh,
I love it. And also, by the way, therapy has that, like, connotation like prenup, like you're like you said, "Oh, someone messed up or they're fighting, and that's why it's" but the rabbi that married us actually say, "I won't marry you unless you do couples therapy before you get married." So we did a couple sessions, and to your point, it was amazing. It did get us to at least start the conversation about things that the person would ask us that we wouldn't even think to start thinking about, and so it was really beneficial, and I'm a big proponent of do a few sessions. It's only gonna
yeah,
start getting you thinking about and the best time to do it, similar to the prenup, is when nothing's wrong. When you just
yep."
have a foundation of communication, of collaboration, it's the best.
I love it. This was awesome. I can't wait to have so many more conversations together in the future.
Yay.
I also can't wait to share these products, with more people. We'll definitely send out a link for them. And also love that you're doing supplements for men as well. I think that's like a totally underserved market, especially in the fertility space. But this was amazing. I can't wait to hang when I come to LA. And thank you so much for
Same.
being on and just being real and
My
vulnerable.
pleasure.
And like, your story is incredible. And I just can't wait to watch you guys grow.
Thank you, and we're here for you, and if anyone has any questions, you can email care@wenatal.com. We answer everything. You don't need to be a customer. If you just have any questions or heard this podcast and wanna ask me something, email us, or you can DM us at @we_natal, and we answer every single DM. Just say, "I heard Vida on
Amazing.
Lily's podcast," and so we're here for you. The point is, like, we've made this to make the road better for those behind us, and Lily, what you're doing is amazing.
Thank
I
you.
truly wish I had it 12 years ago when I was like in this horrible state. And I hope that we can change the narrative around the word prenup and fertility and all the things that just don't serve us. It's a new day. I'm very
Love
excited
it.
for the upcoming year. And if anyone needs anything, we're here.
This is amazing. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise.